Good evening, everyone. My name is John Toews, and I'm the event coordinator here at McNally Robinson Booksellers. Hello.
Hello, John.
No one is supposed to acknowledge me, although it is appreciated. So before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that McNally Robinson is located here in Treaty 1 territory. That's the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, the homeland of the Métis Nation. In addition, McNally Robinson Booksellers itself rests on the land once occupied by the Métis community, Roostertown. We're so pleased you could all join us here tonight on this beautiful day, and so pleased that you made it here safely. Also, greetings to all of those watching online. We're here to launch 2 new books from At Bay Press. Those books would be Siteseeing by Ariel Gordon and Brenda Schmidt, and of course, Pinching Zwieback by Mitchell Toews. You may applaud at both of those titles. Now, you'll have to put up with my voice for a little while longer, but before I get to the actual instructional notes for this evening, I'd first like to call up the publisher at Bay Press, MC Jodry, to say a few words. Please join me in welcoming him.
I'm just going to work with it. Hello, I am Matt Jodry, publisher of At Bay Press, and I am pretty darn thrilled to be here this evening to see these 2 amazing books come together. And they're 2 completely different books, so lucky you. We've got poetry and we've got short fiction, and I'm thrilled. I also just wanted to quickly say that I feel so very fortunate that you guys are all here tonight, and then on top of that, that we're in McNally Robinson, who has been such a bastion and huge supporter of the literary arts, and yeah. Truly one of a kind. Trust me, I've been to so many different cities, and this stands out. So it's a really special thing. Last but not least, I just want to thank John Toews for all his hard work that he does to make this happen. And of course, to all of you for coming out on this lovely evening to make this happen as well. So thanks, appreciate it.
When I forgot my introduction because I am a pro. Thank you so very much, Matt, for those warm comments. We'll now move along to the actual evening itself. So there'll be a few readings from here at the podium, and then we'll be moving along to a conversation which will take place at these dramatically placed stools to my left. Following the conversation, there'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions. So feel free to let those percolate over the course of the evening. And if you are one of those people here, when it comes time for the Q&A, just put your hand up and I'll run over to you with this microphone. That ensures that those watching at home can hear your question and prevents us from having to repeat them. If you're one of those people watching online, feel free to write any questions you might have in the chat and we'll put them to the authors. Now, the only thing I'll put in your brain right now procedurally is at the close of the event, we'll ask you all to remain in your seats for just 1 moment while we safely transport Ariel and Mitchell to the signing table beside the cash desk, and you'll then be free to come over and get books signed. And I'll have more exciting details about signing procedure for you at the close of the evening. Now, it's always exciting to have a book launch here. It's always particularly exciting to celebrate a debut book. So Pinching Zwieback is the debut short fiction collection from Mitchell Toews. Pardon me. It is focused on recurrent, related characters with a common reality, that is small-town Mennonite life. Toews, who grew up in his parents' Mennonite bakery in Steinbach, Manitoba, employs a gritty style containing psychological depth, and his stories reveal the truth behind the fiction. Now, previous to the publication of this book, Mitchell placed stories in 120 literary journals, anthologies, and contests, and that is just since 2016. Mitchell will go head-to-head with Ariel later on as well. Now, he's also a 3-time Pushcart Prize nominee, pardon me again, and was recently a finalist in the following major contests: the 2022 Humber Literary Review Canada-wide Creative Nonfiction Contest, the 2022 J.F. Powers Prize for Short Fiction, and the 2023 Dave Williamson National Short Story Competition. Mitch is currently working on his debut novel and curating a second collection of stories. Mitch and his wife Janice live in their 1950 cabin in the Whiteshell Park and may be found on the water, on the trails, or loose in the wild air. Here with us tonight, please join me in welcoming Mitchell Toews.
Thank you. And thank you, John, for the introduction and all you do for these events. Thanks to McNally Robinson for creating this symbiotic and fun venue for the arts. Here I am in Winnipeg, in the place I have attended in the past, both live and virtually, to show support for friends and writers I'm partial to. And now I am, strangely, one of those up on stage, sitting on a stool, or I will be shortly, trying not to chip a tooth on the microphone. I'm doing that presently. A few days ago, I sent, upon request, a copy of the book Pinching Zwieback to one of my writing heroes. And as if that wasn't enough, in the audience tonight, more heroes, mentors, and icons. Revered faces that stare up at me from the seats and down at me from the walls. And so, here we go. But first, just a few more quick thank yous to Ariel Gordon and by extension, Brenda Schmidt, who have offered to have me share the stage here tonight, ostensibly for mutual benefit, but I think the benefit scale tilted my way, and I'm grateful for this opportunity. Thanks to Sue Sorensen for hosting. I want to also give acknowledgement to my wife, Jan, who in her long-suffering and patient way has put up with my career that includes many interludes in the past 8 years of her husband not doing the practical things that need doing when you live in a 74-year-old cabin in the woods. Instead, she often sees me staring as if hypnotized out at the lake, hands poised above the laptop like I'm waiting for a signal from a loon or a passing beaver to commence writing. Thanks then, it follows, to At Bay Press and Matt Jodry for being that loon and giving me the chance to write for a larger audience and for taking a chance on me. Last, thanks to all of you for attending tonight, in person or via Zoom. There are plenty of post-COVID events to choose from, and it's wonderful to have a live audience. There are many more to thank, but in the interest of time, please see the acknowledgements page in the book, where a long list resides, complete with, I fear, spelling errors and obvious omissions. Before my reading tonight, and just to add a little to give you a quick sense of the background, format, and content found in Pinching Zwieback. Pinching Zwieback comprises fictional stories in roughly chronological order that recount events and conflicts from the Menosphere. Inwardly oriented communities that can generate wonderful characters and beautiful solutions to life's confusion. However, in some cases, a solution may be elusive. Many in the cast make their home in the imaginary town of Hartplatz. Stories also spring from Winkler and Aldergrove, or fictive places like them, a small town pastiche. These are rural Canadian junctures where vectors intersect, faith and doubt, pacifism in a world at war, fervor and absurdity, the temptations of the wide veldt, and of course, humor, often gritty. It could be called Kmart fiction, or maybe better yet, schmumfat fiction. By the way, a low German glossary is provided. God causes it to rain on Chevs and Fords alike, as Dietrich, the main character in 3 of the 20 stories, puts it. It's in this context that the characters resist, pitting their will against that of their foe, the foe they seek to love. Now here's a brief setup for the excerpt I'll read tonight. It's from a story called Fast and Steep, and it's the tale of a young couple and their 4-year-old son in the small prairie town of Hartplatz, Manitoba. This story is one of many that tracks the lives of Hart and Justy Zayn and their son Matt. Other recurrent characters include grandmother Rosie and Matt's close friend Lenny Gerbrandt. Diedrich Deutsch, a character from South Central Manitoba, is also featured in several stories. In Fast and Steep, the young parents, Hart and Justy, build a toboggan slide for their active son. An older neighbor, Jake Funk, has also become involved, and we join in as slide construction begins on a cold winter day. It's page 29 if you're following along. Hart's breath hangs in the air around his head. Sunshine makes the tiny splinters of floating ice into glinting flashes, gone in an instant, and replaced by fresh volunteers, a radiant halo. His long woolen scarf, creased canvas parka, and red toque are all hoary with frost. Heavy leather work mitts, wet and steaming, cover his hands. After first laying out a winding trail in the snow and marking its course with twigs, he sets to stamping and packing the snow into a shallow concave chute about 2 feet wide. With the course laid and the top layer of snow warmed by the sun, he drops to all fours to shape it with palm and balled fist. The toboggan run begins on the steps of his small house, continues over the yard, across a rutted, ice-filled road, and down into the nearby creek bed. Following 2 afternoons of work, Hart is satisfied with his effort. A new garden hose uncoils reluctantly, its rubber memory stubbornly retaining a corkscrew pattern in the raw cold until hot water persuades it to relax. With a thumb over the sputtering end, he mists the run, glazing the surface with new ice. It vaporizes on contact, shrouding the slide in a white cloud. He drags the hose through the snow to soak the run's entire length, his face a frown of concentration. Hey, Lord of the Slides, how am I supposed to do dishes and laundry? Justy calls from the kitchen window to her young husband. No hot water. He grins and waves a non-answer back to her. Hunching to light a smoke, Hart thinks hard about the physics of momentum. If there will be enough to slide his son and the wooden toboggan up the far incline, and then let them stop gently on the other side of Old Tom Creek. That evening, Justy asks, won't it be dangerous to have Matthew slide across the road like that? There's no traffic because they only plow the road on the far side of the creek. This side stays plugged. No one but old man Funk and his tractor use it, and I asked him not to drive over the run. Okay. Justy thinks about the parallel road on the far side, but trusts Hart. Funk, eh? I thought he was blind. Thought you two didn't get along, she says with a wink. As an umpire, yes, no question, blind Jake. But he does okay driving that old corn binder tractor of his. Sees better in the clear winter air, I figure. If you say so. I'll have some coffee if you're getting up, please. Now on to page 33, and fast forward to the day of the inaugural toboggan run, where Matt is going solo. I see our neighbor has taken a sporting interest. Justy nods at the freshly plowed windrow blockades, just as Funk himself comes towards them, walking legs stiff from his house. She waves at him and he gives her a thumbs up. Ready? Hart asks a minute later. The boy's lips press together and he hunkers down like an Olympian. Go, he yells through the red wool scarf. Go! Hart and Justy, one on each side, give him a slight pull back and then shove him down the stairway precipice. Matthew looks so vulnerable, but it's already too late to reconsider. The toboggan skims over the yard and patters wood on ice across the road and around the first bend. Then the boy's helmeted head drops out of sight as he plunges down the embankment. A second later, like the crack of a whip, he shoots out of the chicane, the toboggan loose in a skid. Just as it seems sure to tumble off the course, gravity regains its hold. Finally, the toboggan rises up the bank and comes to a crunching halt on the far side. Funk cheers from his post at the top of the creek Knees bent and one arm waving, the old man jangles a cowbell, raising a din and hollering. Hart does not breathe until he sees the boy wriggling out sideways, kicking his booted feet free of the curled sled nose. Roly-poly in the snow gear, he scrambles up and runs back to the house, shouting and tugging the toboggan behind him, his short legs churning. Justy and Hart watch transfixed, tears welling in smiling eyes. I love you, Hart. She wants to say, just like that. She wants to tell him that and how their little family is everything for her now. Even the prairie winter and Funk's noisy damn tractor. All of us, now and forever, she'd tell him. But she knows that's no good, that he'd just stiffen up and crowd her out. Give him time, she thinks. Hart is still just a boy, really. Mom says these years go by the quickest, but I've got to let him get used to it at his own pace. Look at Funk. His wife died inside of a year, just after they were married. Her and the baby both gone, and her just 17. She sucks air in through her teeth, and it seems like they might crack with the cold. Looking at Hart, she can feel him through her winter clothing. No need for words. She senses his pleasure in her and in their son. It's there like a cat purring in her lap. Even if she found herself a lifetime later, pushing a walker, hair in a gray bun, and with Hart long gone to his man's grave and beside her no more, at least she would have had this. Petal, leaf, and stem growing as one. It's more than most, and today is mine forever, she thinks. Come what may, come what may. Justy hears Hart pull a breath, halfway between a laugh and a sob, as Maddie clambers up the porch steps, ready for more. She sees her son as if in a home movie, like the ones the missionary showed in the church basement. The people's rigid movement and fast motion and energetic. Here too, everyone is talking at once, all bright eyes, and Funk's bell clamors from the road. It is they who remember, not the remembered, who get to decide history, Justy thinks. I hope our little Matthew remembers this day, our joy, his part in it, for as long as he lives. Justy bends to kiss her little boy. His cheek is cold on her lips as an apple from the cellar. From the top branches of the leafless poplar beyond the creek, two crows call to each other as if by name. Their voices ring clear in the frozen air. Justy is reminded of her Oma, bundled in a chair, her skin fragile and transparent as wax paper. When the blackbird is singing, bad weather is bringing, she counseled, her accent thick and beautiful. But Oma, Justy had wanted to say, they sing every day. And I'll pause here and let you finish the story on your own.
Thank you so much, Mitch. We'll now be treated to a reading from the second book that we're launching tonight, which is, of course, Siteseeing by Ariel Gordon and Brenda Schmidt. It's a poetry collection, call and response. Ariel intended originally to write about urban Manitoba, the city and the trees, and Brenda was supposed to write about rural Saskatchewan and birds. And over the course of the year of writing, the matter of place took over, and the intentions branched and flew apart. The poets wrote about the natural world and people making their way through it all. They wrote home as they found it. Ariel Gordon is a Winnipeg, Treaty 1 territory-based writer, editor, and enthusiast. She is the ringleader of Rites of Spring, a National Poetry Month project with the Winnipeg International Writers Festival that appears in the Winnipeg Free Press. Her first two collections of poetry won the Lansdowne Prize for Poetry. Her most recent books are the essay collection Treed, Walking in Canada's Urban Forests, which was published by Woolsack and Wynne, and the first book in the public poetry project, Tree Talk, also published by Edbay Press, which was nominated for 3 Manitoba Book Awards. This is her 5th book. Now, some of you may know that Ariel and I have a relationship based purely on sarcasm and threats of physical violence. But that notwithstanding, I'm always so incredibly impressed whenever I come to read her words on the page. There's a particular viscerality and raw beauty that stalks every page of this book and her others. And that's all shot through with a specific type of elegance that's entirely Ariel's own. So I'm thrilled to hear a little bit more from this book. Now, sadly, Brenda is not able to join us, being based in Saskatchewan, but we do have a wonderful Winnipeg replacement who will be playing the role of Brenda and then hosting the conversation this evening. Sue Sorensen teaches English at Canadian Mennonite University, where she is also the director of CMU Press. Sue is the editor of West of Eden, Essays on Canadian Prairie Literature, and the author of A Large Harmonium, The Caller, and the forthcoming poetry collection, Acutely Life, which is particularly exciting because if you've ever encountered Sue's writing, you always want more. So please join me in welcoming Ariel Gordon and Sue Sorensen, AKA Brenda Schmidt.
See, I'm normally ready for John's insults. And that just like almost undid me. He actually said something nice. It's shocking. Can you do your traditional wave from your cave, oh wizard? Thank you. All right, I have one other direction for you. So Brenda is watching the YouTube live stream. And I am so happy to have written this book with Brenda. I'm so honored to have gotten the chance. And so I'd like to dedicate this reading to her. And I'd like you to wave to her. And given that you were my friends, I will also accept rude gestures. So I know some of you need to get them out. So, okay, I'm gonna give you a count of 3 and then I want you to wave and gesticulate and, ooh. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Hello, Brenda. Hello. All right. I'd also like to dedicate this reading to Sue Sorensen, who is the best poetry understudy you could ever get. She's such a good writer, she's such a good organizer, she's such a good community member, and she's such a good friend. So I couldn't think of anyone else I wanted to read with besides Brenda. I'm also grateful to the At Bay Press team, but especially to Matt, because he likes to publish beautiful books. For some reason, he's kind of obsessed with making beautiful books. And he's also a character like John in this book. So you'll notice there's a thread where there's a butterfly fiend friend, and that's Matt. And another little fillip is that, you see this little butterfly? It's kind of snuck into the book. And that's one of his photographs. And is that the actual size of the butterfly? It is, yeah. And I think we saw that. Did we see that? Yes. Yeah. He always drags me along to look for butterflies. And then I'm like, did you see that mushroom? And he's like, yes. But he recently confessed to me that he's actually more interested in mushrooms, and he feels like now that he's cheating, that he's cheating on his first love. So I always like those ambivalent feelings in my friends. So I also would like to say that Mitch has just started breathing normally. He's fairly certain now that he's not having a heart attack after the adrenaline of launching his first book. So now, while he's actually able to like hear things and breathe, let's give him another round of applause, because you never get to launch your book, another book again, your first book. All right, and to my glorious writing and publishing community, you're all fools and I love you. So thank you so much for coming. And to my family, thank you so much as well. Although I will note that when I came down this morning, product in my still damp hair, my teenage daughter told me I looked like sweaty Loki, which is not the most supportive thing I have ever heard in the entire world. She's not watching this live stream because she gets secondhand embarrassment, but I'm mentioning her and I hope her ears are bleeding. So we're just gonna start at the beginning. If you've got a copy of the book, we're starting on page 1.
And then are you gonna tell them what the second part of the reading will be?
Second part, oh yes, okay. So we've picked a section, we're just gonna, that we've actually rehearsed, and we're gonna do that. And then we have a few extra minutes. So we're gonna let you pick a page number. Someone from the audience will just shout out a page number and we will do a little reading from there.
Which we think is very brave.
even avant-garde. All right, ready? Standing at the axis of hydropole and 100-year-old elm, head back, I resolve 3 dark lumps against a February sky, a wickerwork of winter branches and wires into owls, then wind-whipped plastic bags, then bickering squirrels. Bark rains down. Tell me, who shapeshifted? Me? Them?
"50 feet up in the cottonwood, 2 ravens, wing to wing on a branch, reaching over the drifts, twist bills into breasts, leisurely, throat feathers blooming under the 3 p.m. sun. They pause. One eyes the adjacent branch broken during the blizzard of blizzards. The other wipes its bill on snow at its feet and eyes me. Between us, the still slim buds point up, grasping almost.
During the polar vortex, a friend's linden cracked like the spine of a favorite book in the deep cold. I windowed my boulevard elm while the quote, persistent large-scale cyclone spun, an uneven chunk of wood on a lathe, the continent shaking. As the Arctic Ocean warms, tell me, how do you overwinter? How do you widow a tree?
Water drips, the snow finally sinking. A thin string of deer ignores me as they head past ragged maples. Less than half the herd it was. They go to sleep beneath the neighbor's front room window. Safe at last, one of the triplets, ice hanging from its jaw, never woke up, I'm told. Its siblings trot by now, necks pulled back, mouths hanging open. There's nothing I can do. Twigs rise and fall in the switching wind.
The snow/ice loud under my boots, dense like styrofoam, durable like metal. Under the swish of my snow pants, oh, never mind. The snow/ice loud under my boots, dense like styrofoam, durable like metal, under the swish of my snow pants. My mask's loops fastened to my hair with ice. This weekend, the forecast calls for +9, but I don't know how to walk when the world trips like a breaker between freeze and thaw. Yes, I'm afraid of falls, but most of all, new buds/bugs freezing.
17 geese fly by my window. Do they see me making my bed? March 4th, I count again to be sure, as they set down on a hill almost free of snow to eat red lentils the combine didn't get last fall. It was a good crop. The field sprayed 4 times. Herbicide, fungicide, fungicide, desiccant. Up goes the comforter.
I walked a sunny ditch full of mulch and sawdust after 40 Manitoba maples and willows, mature trees that had set themselves up under the power lines at the edge of a park were mowed down. They say blackouts and power interruptions. They say volunteer and scrub. What they mean is bucket trucks and chippers now, and herbicides later. It smelled glorious. It felt awful.
The maples in the yard, snapped 20 feet up, die with dignity, each a Gothic castle at church, spires pointing out my lack of control over the future. Some I grew up with, some were just keys when I left, not knowing one day I'd be back. House sparrows stuff belfries with ditch grass and chirp emphatically, whether I'm here or not. I can't take down trees so holy.
Twice, the widowmaker has dropped hefty limbs onto the boulevard, and what's left hangs out over the road like a dare. Woodpeckers love it, sundialing holes around the cut edge, but I take care not to park under it when the wind rises. My Wolseley elm leans over the house a little more every year, its seedlings competing with volunteer Manitoba maple and creeping Charlie in the unmade beds below.
A moose climbs a drift, more than a moose high, not once breaking through crowns of willow and dogwood now in reach. The slough will be full this spring, unlike last spring, and the moose I watch from inside will hole up and eat.
Early spring and snow-eating temps have me perched on my porch when an entire flock of sparrows enters the beat-up cedar and spindly lilac in front of the house. Cheep, cheep. That bird call imitation was cheap, I'm just gonna say. Okay, enters the beat-up cedar and spindly lilac in front of the house. Cheep, cheep. I am always falling up winter's stairs, asking warm spells and cold snaps. Are you climate changed? Cheep.
Yesterday, herds of deer grazed the hilltops, now mostly bare of snow. Upwards of 80, heads up, heads down, some marching over drifts right up to the house. Yes, I'm still here. Today, just one lies in view, magpies cleaning off its ribs.
Naked limbs, white against the new blue of a warm spring afternoon, dying cottonwood in a high wind. Bits of silvery bark in the brown grass beneath my feet. On a snag, last summer's kite, a bundle of pink plastic. It rustles, remembering flight. My brown eyes already blown to the next dying cottonwood.
March ends much the way it began, if I remember. Correct me. If I am song, I am the song of the American tree sparrow, a flocking song, I think. But right now they call out in alarm as I build a bunny out of snow the storm left behind 2 days ago. It's hard. The ears keep breaking off.
The great horned owls hoot at each other from neighboring branches of graveyard spruce. The ground littered with loot, intact pellets and the ones spilling small bones and tufts of regurgitated fur. Underground, lateral roots and disintegrating boxes of big bones. Hoots, more hoots. But it's April and they haven't nested. Were they spooked by that March heat wave? Are they done? Are we? All right, we need a page number. The first one to shout out a page number, we'll read it. 125, she had that ready.
Let's just read for,
Okay,
let's read for just a couple pages.
okay,
Let's read to there.
all right,
So
so,
I'll start.
yeah, go.
I have to start down there.
Yeah.
A vole shoots down a tree well as I round the house, the same tree where the shrike sits and waits, I guess, for you, little vole. Your future a hook with no relation to me and my shovel full of snow. Though perhaps thinking, vole, is enough to ensure you and your flight response will live on. The shovel, heavy as I carry a lack of sleep around, up half the night, Googling the volcanic explosivity index and volcanic winter while waiting to hear news about the people of Tonga fills and empties. The surface of the drift like cement, as they say around here, breaking apart in chunks that barely fit in my shovel.
I like to think of myself as the chunk that barely fit in Brenda's shovel, but that's just me. I'm congested, conflating extreme weather warnings with record test positivity rates. Quote, exposed skin will freeze in 30 seconds with, quote, for every 1 case reported, there are 8 to 10 missed. We squint at the freezer burnt sky, at the public health dashboard, and pull our daughter from school. Classmates organize a walkout for the first day back after a post-Xmas week of remote learning. Children of the internet, they post protest chants to Instagram. We're your kids, not your guinea pigs. Lab classes, not lab rats. I diffuse my airborne anxiety with my Monday regular. We just crossed the bridge over the Assiniboine when my friend looked back and saw his daughter on her way home from school. She'd been 20 feet behind us for 10 minutes, jacket unzipped. She tells him she wouldn't have said anything if he hadn't seen her in the easily spooked way of teenagers. He runs over to hug her. The forecast says there's a storm coming.
I think we're done.
Yeah.
We're gonna sit down now.
There will now be a moment of inelegance while we read this microphone.
Do you want your water?
Oh, I'll switch that around to bring
Okay.
fresh water for Sue. There's the inelegance.
That last.
Oh, not live yet, sorry.
That last.
There we go.
That last poem, the friend was John. Ha ha. He's not, you know how people think that teachers, when they see teachers out in the world, they're shocked because they live in a closet somewhere. I think people think that they have a very attractive book, event coordinator box in the back that he sits in like this in between events. But no, he's a person, he walks.
So I get to be the host now of a little bit of Q&A. I've written down millions of questions for each of these people, and will, depending on how verbose they are, I will cut them, and so that you've got a chance to ask a few questions too. So what a treat to hear such two very different books, which I was speed reading all day today. And I'm gonna go back and forth. I have questions for both Mitch and for Ariel. And I'm going to start with Mitch, and I'm going to ask first, I read everything in this book, including the glossary, and I still don't know what a DARP is.
A village.
Made up stories from the DARP, it's not in the glossary.
Oh.
So can you tell us, Mitch, about the decision to make this a collection of linked short stories, or maybe that wasn't a decision, maybe it just sort of happened?
Kind of serendipity, kind of organic. I sent Matt a query of a short story collection, and they included most of these stories and others that were divergent, that were not just about Mennonite experiences or just about small towns. There were other stories that I had that I felt were stronger pieces. And so two things happened. I did okay in a national contest. So I pointed that out to him quickly. And he had the idea, I'm pretty sure, to pull it all into something that was cohesive. So the small town experience. And then we talked about it, and we thought about a cast of characters that would be recurrent and that would come up. And Matt had the great idea, sort of a cinematic idea, I think, of not having it strictly chronological, but having a few jerks and stutter steps in it. And so I think that was a good idea. Yeah. And that's where that came out of. And then as we worked it, then it started to take a shape.
And one for you, Ariel. Can you just tell us about how you met Brenda Schmidt, how long you've known her? I think, you know, she's always lived in Saskatchewan, hasn't she? So how did you get to know her?
So this book is coming out almost 20 years to the day that Brenda Schmidt and I met each other. There's this great institution in Saskatchewan, which I don't know if you know about Saskatchewan's arts community, but for years they had just buckets of money that they gave to all the writers to like bathe in. Buckets of money. You could have a whole career as an artist in Saskatchewan. You know, like, which is hard. It's hard. Who here has a whole career as an artist here? I think only Greg can put his hand up. But you know, like, it's hard. And I have always tried to eavesdrop on the Saskatchewan community and go there and pretend like I live there and I belong for years. So the first iteration of that was 2003 when I went to the Sage Hill Writing Community, which is a great institution. And I met her there. And after that, she had already had a book out. I was 7 years away from my first book. And afterwards, she pretended like we were friends, but she actually mentored me. She actually behaved like a mentor, told me what to do and what not to do, which is equally as important. And yet she called me, she's called herself my minion. She said I was the boss and she was my minion. And I don't know, I had worked the back end of an At Bay Press event for a book called Ex Nihilo, which was an English-French collaboration between Roger Levelet and Edie Blodgett. And after that, I was so inspired by that idea of collaborating with someone. And it was midnight, and I wrote Brenda an email. I was like, so, wouldn't happen to want to work on something? And she immediately responded and said yes. And then we just started writing. I sent the first poem that's in the collection. She wrote the next one. And then it proceeded from there. Like, one poem couldn't exist without the next one or the previous one.
I'll just follow up with you, Ariel. It's the form of the book, for those of you that haven't looked at it yet, it's 1 year, starts in March and goes through 1 year, but there are no divisions marked, except that Brenda's poems are in italics and Ariel's are in regular font. So it's not explicitly marked, sort of one long poem, actually. But the one thing that you seem to have fallen into is a 3-line stanza. And so I'm just wondering, you know, how you made the decisions that you did about the form of the book, because you could have done lots of different things. You could have had chapters that were the months. You could have done all sorts of things. But.
Yeah, and we definitely considered that in revision, and then we just decided to let it stand. We had one. I just kept on throwing. We just exchanged emails, and it would clang into my inbox. And if I didn't respond right away with like "got it" or "great" or "nice," she would be like, "Did you get my email? Did you get my email? Is it in your spam?" And I wrote poems while watching TV and while, you know, just before bed, because I'd just gotten a poem from her. And I've never written so quickly. Sometimes we wrote 2 poems a day each. Like, that's a lot. I am usually much slower than that. But in some ways, I had to elevate my writing craft to meet Brenda's standards. And we were just so thrilled, I think, to be writing together, that it felt like easy and joyful. And that's a great way to feel for a year, never mind a pandemic year.
So a question for Mitch. You're working with Mennonite characters, with Mennonite small town life. There are all kinds of Mennonites, and most of the people in this room know all of the very, you know, many complicated divisions in the Mennonite world. But the ones in your stories are pretty secular, which might be surprising to a lot of people who are connected with Mennonite literature. And I want to say that for a book about Mennonites, there are a surprising number of fistfights. So did you set out to sort of consciously debunk some of the stereotypes that we might have about Mennonites?
Oh, stereotypes and Mennonites, that's a great hot topic, and will test my verbosity, if that's the way to. Yeah, I think I was a little bit of an outsider in Steinbach. Our family was one that had great Mennonite pedigree. in many ways, and yet one that was that had disassociated from parts of Mennonite life. And so I was just that Mennonite looking kid running around Steinbach with access to everything, which in a small town in the 60s is everything. And yet I was somehow compelled to be observant, even as a little boy, I think, because I was different. And these were my friends and people I loved, and my family that I would go to war for, but we were different. And so if I write, if there are, I hadn't actually thought that there were, that it was a more of a secular book, but I guess it is, compared to many others, perhaps, not compared to all. And I think that's a kind of a natural occurrence for me. As to fistfights, I think I mentioned somewhere in here, or maybe somewhere else, I can't remember, that I was, I was short. I have a late birthday, so I was always the youngest kid in class. I was short. I had bright orange hair, the color of a popsicle, ears that stuck out like the size of a Penner Transfer truck mirror, and I had opinions. I had a lot of opinions, and I like to express them. So fistfights were a part of my Steinbach experience. And so were black eyes and bloody lips.
Well, I'm going to pick up on something you just said. I mean, that you are obviously a very fine observer of people and details. And as I was reading these two books, I thought, well, these books aren't much alike, but the one of the few things that is in common with these books is that you are both keen attenders to detail. So maybe ask Mitch about this first. I mean, is that something you've developed in your writing over the years? That sort of close attention to detail? And we heard it, the detail of the creation of the toboggan run, and you have a lot of details like that, details of playing baseball and things. Is that something you've consciously acquired over the years?
Yeah, I mean, baseball earned its place in my heart early on and never left. And and baseball is a great metaphor for life, almost always, as far as I'm concerned. I'm biased. Sure, it showed up lots, and I'm happy for that. I sometimes write stories that are about mundane, so-called mundane things. Our lives are so complex and so confusing and difficult, even if we have everything going for us, that there is no such thing as a mundane person. And so in order to pull that mundane or that everyday experience out of the dust, I think detail is something that can do it. So when the stone hits the pole and all the frogs and crickets stop singing, horny little buggers, then that's something that's real, and it's also something that is relatable to everyone who reads it, and it helps make that story of a guy on a country road throwing stones at a telephone pole somehow meaningful.
Yeah,
I guess.
And both you and Brenda are also, I mean, you set out, I suppose, more deliberately. I mean, that was what this was going to be, a year of pandemic, where people paid close attention to the things close to them. Also, both of you very aware of and very anxious about climate change. And when you read Siteseeing, all of you will notice, right, that the amazing details offered, tunnels made by mice, buds on trees, the exact amount of rain and rain gauges. So it's great to have a record of that year for us to look at in the future, because I think with history that people think it's supposedly important to write down the important big things, but it actually isn't. It's all these small things that we need to remember. I guess that isn't a question, but
the nice thing about working on this book was during that year, it kind of forced me to go on more adventures. I mean, the only thing we really had available to us was the outside anyways, but knowing that I had to write a poem today and tomorrow and Sunday got me out in the world more often than I might have otherwise. I tend to get sulky sometimes and refuse to leave the house and go for walks, even though the walk will make me feel better. I don't do it, but I kind of had to this year. And I like going on adventures, and it's not an adventure unless I have got sticks or burrs in my hair and I've fallen down and I'm muddy, right? Like, and I'm really good at that. I'm 50 years old, but I still regularly get muddy. And so this was like much more, it was an adventure-filled year, and I needed that. But in terms of the noticing, I think being a nature poet kind of trains you to notice. But I remember as a child deliberately trying to force myself to notice more. To like, when I remember walking home from the University of Winnipeg to my apartment on Furby, and I was like, if you look up, like I noticed how so everyone was just looking at their feet or looking at the ground, and I was like, I'm gonna look up, I'm gonna see, like, do you know what I mean? Like I remember saying, okay, yeah, look up. Like make sure you just keep looking up. And I felt like I was seeing things that no one else could see or wanted to see. And I think my goal as a writer is to help people see things that maybe they hurry by, and to say to people that there are things in our cities that are worth connecting with and that are beautiful and interesting. And I think we do better if we feel like we're a part of the world, that we're connected to it, that we're animals just like everything around us, right? Like I think we do better as humans, and as humans confronting climate change, if we feel those relationships, if we pay attention to those relationships, all of which sounds very hippy dippy, but oh well.
So be it.
Yeah.
I have one more quick question for each of you, and then we've got a couple of minutes, so get ready if you have a question or two. But Mitch, your stories are full of life, just full of vitality. And it was clear to me when I closed the book that you are a storyteller. And not all writers are storytellers. I mean, I'm a writer and I'm actually not a storyteller. That's not my forte. But were you always a storyteller?
I think there's probably a few people in the room that were around for the ongoing storytelling baptismal, which took place usually in cars driving to or from Winnipeg, to or from sporting events or work outings. The radio gets boring after a while. And so if you have 5 guys wearing parkas coming back from a basketball game and everybody is soaked in sweat, a little conversation as a distraction is a good thing. And the thing is, you wouldn't think that that was a breeding ground for literary excellence. Although, in order to hold an audience, the other 4 guys in the car, you have to be succinct, you have to make a strong point, you have to keep their attention, and you can't let them shout you down in the end. So there are secrets to be had in the backseat of a stinking car.
Yeah.
And bacterial infections.
So I'm giving you a nice question now,
Okay.
so it gets serious.
I'm ready.
So I was surprised when reading Siteseeing that I would actually move fluidly from Brenda to you and occasionally not notice that I'd shifted poets. That was interesting. And I think that's because you were both looking outward all the time. You actually didn't speak at each other. You didn't make comments about each other, although you picked up on things in each other's poems, but you were both looking out as reporters, looking at your environment. And did you plan that from the beginning? Because it's a very unusual thing to read through a whole book where you've got 2 voices and they're actually not talking at each other. You're talking with each other, but you were both facing out.
We had no plans. We just started writing, right? That was it.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
fascinating, yeah.
Yeah.
It's for those of you that haven't looked at it yet, it's a very fluid community voice and obviously a good conversation. We have a couple of minutes and I just wanted to leave time if anyone else had questions for either Mitch or Ariel.
I like watching John run. Run, John, run.
Mitch, the question is to you in regards to the DARP, the DARP Steinbach. Any thoughts as to why so many cultural workers have come out of that DARP, and particularly writers? And most of them have a grit to what they're talking about, the life, the little things, not necessarily the big things. But why is that coming out of there? And it goes back to, Arnold Dick. I mean, it's a long tradition. Any thoughts?
Well, Mary Lou Dreger, who's here tonight, and Andrew Unger, who may be here tonight, and I were in Steinbach about a month ago, 2 months ago, I guess, and we had a discussion about exactly that. Andrew is kind of chronicling the large number of writers, poets, artists, I guess, in a broader sense, that have come out of Steinbach. And so we tossed around a couple of ideas. One of them was maybe some educational excellence that somehow pooled in Steinbach, and maybe particularly in the areas of English lit and composition and those types of things. I sometimes think too that one of the tenets of Mennonite life through the decades was a point in which transition had to be made in order to be successful financially, and the key to that was language. And so while Low German and High German for church was built into the system, already bilingualism, sort of, well, yeah, it is. And then, but English was sort of lagging for some. And so there were many, like people on my Toews side, who said, English is the way of this country and the way of prosperity, and so that's what we're going to do. So maybe attention to those essays that were written on the kitchen table. Maybe they got just as much attention as math and science, and that's not always the case. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of depth and a lot of great ideas that could be tossed around to try to answer that question. I think it's an important question in lots of ways.
So we have 2 questions online. One of them is actually from Andrew Unger, which I will throw to you in just a moment, Mitch.
I knew he was here.
I'll just go to Ariel first with a question from Rowan Crow, fellow poet, who asks, how did your relationship with urban life shift during the writing of Siteseeing? Did the collaborative process with Brenda lead you to particular kinds of connections with the world around you?
I became obsessed with the wild turkeys of Wolseley. I started I was like, I'm gonna see them. People kept on posting them to the neighborhood group on Facebook, and I was like, I am not seeing any turkeys. And Carrie Ryan kindly loaned me her backyard turkey. And I'm not referring to her partner, I'm referring to an actual turkey. And I remember I was walking, we went on one of our walks, and we do the Wolseley-Wellington Loop, which is a great walk. And I remember seeing a couple of old men loitering in the alley. I'm like, seen any turkeys? They're like, there are no turkeys in Wolseley. And I'm like, yes, there are. So I don't know, I became obsessed with the turkeys. There were a couple of things that I became determined to find or to see or to, yeah. But no, I think I have already sort of been firmly ensconced in my urban nature obsession by that point. I just maybe sharpened it like a pencil. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And the aforementioned Andrew Unger has a 2-part question. He says, hi Mitch, I've led literary walking tours of Steinbach, stopping at locations associated with Miriam Toews, Patrick Fries, and others. What was your address growing up? More seriously, can you talk a little bit about how you feel your work fits within the canon of Southern Manitoba literature?
Oh my goodness.
1 N, well, 2. I don't want to presume, but I have a story to tell, as does every single person. And I was afraid of telling it for quite a while because I thought it would be seen to be derivative. Because there's other wonderful, fantastic, powerful stuff out there. And so and my name is Toews, And,
Any
So,
relation?
yes, I don't know about John, but
Probably something.
yeah. So anyway, that backed me off a little bit. And then I somehow came to the conclusion that it's okay to tell my stories in my way, and you know, devil take the hindmost, or evil take the hindmost. So, thank you, Andrew.
And we do have time for one more question locally, if anyone has something to close us out on.
Something complimentary would be nice. Like, why are you so good? I always like that question.
Why are you so
Because of you, Lynn, you make me, you are the wind beneath my wings.
If there are no further inquisitive questions from folks here, I can turn things over to you folks if you have any closing comments, and then I'll come out with some exciting signing procedure announcements.
I'm hoping I get to levitate to the front signing table. He says he's just gonna transport us. I'm hoping that there's some like levitation. It's a litter. Oh, are you gonna carry it? Okay. I say to the shortest person in the room.
I want to say thank you to writers in residence in Manitoba. Ariel was one of them, Anna was another, and there's about 8 of them, I guess, that helped me for free. They made a buck out of the deal, so it was a win-win. It was well organized, easy access, and it made a huge difference for me to get a different kind of third-party, objective, professional assistance for my work. Ariel ripped me to shreds, but in a gentle,
Professional way.
huggy, that's right.
Professional. Jen, do you have anything to say? Thank you so much to Sue Sorensen for her excellence.
I am indeed. So huge thanks again to all of you for being with us here tonight. Thank you to all of you watching online as well for joining us. And many thanks to, of course, Adbay Press for publishing both of these books, without whom we would not have a reason to gather. So thank you again. We will ask you all to remain in your seats for one moment. We will transport in it's more of a compulsory trudge, I believe, than anything else, over to the signing table. So Mitch and Ariel will there be ensconced, and you'll be able to descend and have copies of your book signed. We have copies of the books at the table. We have copies of the book at the cash desk. Feel free to get them signed before you pay for them. Please pay for the books. And I'd ask you all to join me one more time in thanking our wonderful host, Sue Sorensen, and ERSAT's Brenda Schmidt. Ariel Gordon, and of course, Mitch Toews. Thank you all so very much for being here.